I am pretty sure that I started the actual episode. You did the mini episode, so I think we're back to me.
Okay.
But I'm not positive. But like I said, I lost my notebook, so I guess this is my punishment. I'll start it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess if starting is a punishment,
It
then
is for me
I feel like that's what we should do.
because I always feel awkward. And then people say they will cut out the awkwardness and don't.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like it adds character
Yeah,
to
sure.
the thing.
Sure, buddy.
We're so good at book talking, but
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want people to get this image of us as like perfect humans.
Oh,
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. People are going to walk away with that impression for sure.
People are always coming up to me and being like, "How are you so perfect?"
Yeah, I've heard that so many times.
Pretty big issue in my life.
Yeah, same. All right. So, welcome to the podcast that we do. Why did you read that? Where we talk about books.
That's right. Starring Meagan.
Yes, starring.
Starring Meagan.
Yes,
Co-starring Peter.
Peter.
And our books.
That's correct. They're the real star. Let's be honest. That's why people show up.
Yeah. The night sky was dark because all the stars were on the Why Did You Read That podcast?
Yeah, another problem that we have. And also starring a joke.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Before we talk about our books,
Yeah.
I get a joke.
Yes. And because I lost my notebook, Peter and I both work out of the same building, and it's currently undergoing some construction. So
Yeah.
we've had to move all of our work items into new spaces.
It's been a bit of a disaster.
It's been a bit of a chaos moment,
Yeah.
and I have lost all of my notes. They are somewhere in my house, but I'm sure I put them somewhere for safekeeping.
Yep.
And now they are lost for an indeterminate amount of time. So
On my side of things, I have a huge box of office stuff that's just at my house because it's stuff that I'm like, oh, I might need to use this in the next 6 months,
yeah,
but also I might not. So I don't know. I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
well, maybe I'll just hang on to this for 6 months. And then if we're moving back in and I haven't opened it, I'll just pitch it or something. Just be like, well, there it goes.
See, I have a bucket of like pens and pencils and highlighters because I was like, I could put this in storage, but it's going to be in like a hot storage like container
They'll ruin them.
all through the summer, and all of my pens are going to dry out.
It's true.
So I just took them home.
The most amusing thing for me has been I took home a paper guillotine, which
Oh.
turns out probably weighs 50 pounds and is humongous and is currently sitting in our living room. And I just want to take this opportunity to tell my wife I'm sorry. I kind of didn't think this through
Yeah.
because I was like, where are we going to put this? But the place we're renting has, you sometimes you go up the stairs and there's like a weird little landing space that's not really good for anything. And it's like, what do you do with that? And today she was like, why don't you just put it up there? And I was like, what do you mean, just like on the floor or something? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, actually, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
It was just like, at first, it was very,
On the floor.
combative. Yeah. Just sitting there on the floor in our apartment. That doesn't make any sense. That's very class. And then I was like, actually, that's, okay, quick story with that. We were at a bar recently that had a Nintendo.
Okay.
And it had a Donkey Kong game. And she gets a little belligerent sometimes.
Competitive.
Yeah. A little competitive, a little bit, I don't know how to put it, but like
Some competitive smack talking.
she's got some edge to her.
Yeah.
And we were playing a game on this Nintendo. And then she was like, Donkey Kong may have it, huh? And she was like, what do you think came first, Donkey Kong or King Kong? And I was like, oh, King Kong. And she's like, and I was like, well, it was definitely King Kong because that came out like in, I don't know, the late 20s or early 30s. And like, also Nintendo was sued by Universal over Donkey Kong. But when I said, oh, King Kong was definitely first, she just turned to me and she's like, well, how do you know? And I was like, whoa.
Never question a librarian when it comes to trivia.
And never question me when it comes to Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like every
fair.
book that, is like the history of console gaming that comes out, I've read it. I'm like, I've read the same stories like 50 times. We went to another place and I was like, I heard this place was the inspiration for Star Fox. And like,
Did you bring a pair of glasses to just put on so you could adjust them as you were relaying these facts?
I should have.
Yeah.
Or at least a pair of glasses so that when she said, how do you know, I could like whip them off and
Yeah.
be like, do you know who you're asking right now?
Or stop and put them on and be like, pardon me, madam.
Yeah. I was like, we are married. I've known you for over a decade. Do you really think I don't know?
Yeah.
If you're going to ask me about something to do with video games and apes, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to know the correct answer. Anyway, okay.
All right.
I'm ready for a joke.
Are you ready? Okay. I didn't want to interrupt.
I had to get that out of my
you
system.
Needed to, yeah.
I had to apologize to my wife and then embarrass her.
You had some things to say. I didn't want to get in the way of that.
This is the ebb and flow of marriage.
All right. So I had to look this up, right before because my list of jokes is,
Missing.
Yeah.
MIA.
My friend keeps telling me to cheer up these days. He says it could be a lot worse. I could be trapped inside an underground hole filled with water. I know he means well.
Oh, boy. There's something I like about that joke because as you're going through it and it's starting to just get like where I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be paying attention to here. I don't know where the joke's coming. So I do like that.
And then it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, but it's still
slaps you in the face like a wet fish.
Still bad, though.
Well, I liked it. All right. So now that that's done, here are my 4 books.
Okay.
I have a graphic novel, Brunhild the Dragon Slayer, Volume 1, by Yuiko Agarizaki.
Okay.
Then I have a biography. I was like, memoir, autobiography, biography? Which is it? Biography.
Okay.
All Blood Runs Red, The Legendary Life of Eugene Bullard, Boxer, Pilot, Soldier, Spy.
Okay.
By Phil Keith and Tom Clavin.
All right.
Then I have a reread from childhood, Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper, which is the first in the Dark is Rising sequence.
Okay.
And finally, a romance novel that is not out until May, but I tell myself that that's okay because you can put it on hold even though it's not out in May.
Okay.
Because we already have it on order. And it is Rules for Ruin by Mimi Matthews.
Okay. You're so much better about that than I am. You're like, I'll make sure that people can actually get this before I don't go.
Well, I care.
Like, here's something you'll never be able to read.
Here's a weird pamphlet that I picked up out of a random table from somebody who was selling things off the street in a town that's 100 miles from here.
Here's a hand stapled 8.5 or 11 by 17 magazine about how Stephen King shot John Lennon. Enjoy.
Wow.
Okay. Some good choices here, but I think you could probably guess that All Blood Runs Red sounds like a something that I would be interested in.
Yeah. Well, so I initially put this book on my to-read list because I heard about it. Someone was pitching it at a book event that I was at. And they said, this is basically the life story of the most interesting man in the world.
Okay.
And, they're not far off, if I'm being honest. So Eugene Bullard was born in Georgia in the very early 1900s. I don't remember exactly when. He was the son of an ex-slave. And so he had been born into slavery and then was freed. And his mother was, I forget what kind. She was a full Indian, maybe Creek. I don't remember. And he was one of many children. And his father used to tell stories about how in France, there was equality. And so he, at a very young age, decided that he wanted to move to France. And so he ran away from home at 11
Oh my God.
At 11 years
Already,
old.
like, okay, here
And
we
he
go.
made several attempts at it. He would, like, hop on trains and, like, hitch rides, and his father would always hunt him down and bring him home. And
Which,
then
I mean, on one hand, I'd be like, in that era, it seems very difficult. But on the other hand, if he's like 11,
yeah.
you'd be like, I mean, how far is he going to get? And also, I would think it would be pretty easy along the way to be like, hey, did you see like an unaccompanied 11-year-old
Yeah.
hanging out around here?
Yeah.
You know, you happen to notice which way he went? Because if it was me, I'd be like, I did in fact see that. I noticed when I was, getting on a train that there was just a child here.
Well, see, and that's the thing is he didn't really have a lot of money, so he like, at one point, he climbed into the stuff underneath a train car and just rode it
God.
overnight. So he was always like, "Gonna get to the ocean, and I'll figure it out from there." And so he eventually did get far enough that his father wasn't able to track him down.
Hmm.
He joined some performance troops, like travelers who at the time were known by the pejorative gypsies.
Mhm.
He traveled with them for quite some time because they tended to be more accepting of different people in, early
Sure.
1900s Georgia, being a little black kid by yourself, not necessarily
Is this Georgia as in Atlanta or the country?
as in the state,
Right,
Georgia,
okay, yes,
US.
yeah.
Or,
That's what
like,
I meant instead
yeah.
of saying as in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, I was like, well, he grew up in the countryside, but
Yeah, yeah.
just the state of Georgia.
I asked that in a horrible way that did not permit you to give a straightforward answer. Okay. So he escaped. He's with this traveling performance group or
Well, he
whatever?
did lots of things.
Oh,
Like
okay.
he did like lots of odd jobs. He got like day jobs. He got interested in boxing.
Mm,
And so he would like help out boxers and started doing some sparring and all of that. All the while constantly trying to get closer and closer to the ocean, hoping that he would figure out a way to like cross the ocean and at least make it closer to France.
I both love and am given great anxiety by I'll just get to the ocean and figure it out from there.
He just flew by the seat of his pants, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because he eventually ends up, I think, in Norfolk, Virginia, and he finds this boat full of sailors speaking a language he doesn't know, turns out to be German. And he starts making friends with the sailors, and they pay him a little bit of money to like run the errands that they don't have time because they're like loading their ship, getting
Sure.
ready for and so they're like run to the store and pick up like here's some like snacks for me on the road back or like some I need a new whatever, and he would run that errand for them.
Eye patch, whatever
like,
sailor,
like mail this
horizontally
letter,
striped
or I
shirt.
need I need a new blanket, or I don't know. So he would run those errands for them, and then they would give him a little money.
Okay.
And so meanwhile, he's also starting to pick up a little bit of German, So he figures out when the ship is going to leave, and he stows away. And when it's been like a couple days, and he brought like a bottle of lemonade with him, and he was like, "This will get me to Europe." And then
because
like
he doesn't really know how far.
he has no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, like he
God.
didn't like graduate school. He's 11 years old. Like he's an 11-year-old black kid in the
Yeah.
deep south.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You're like, that is perfect kid logic.
Yep. It's like I
whenever
have a loaf of
see-
bread, some cheese, and a bottle of lemonade. Let's go to France.
It's like whenever you're like in the airport and you see like a 5-year-old with a backpack and you're
Yeah.
like, I bet there is nothing of like actual survivorship value in that backpack. Like I guarantee you.
Or if there is, it was packed by an adult.
Yeah, right. You're like, it's like half a crayon and then like,
A teddy bear.
yeah, and yeah, I don't know. So, like a jar of
piece of
peanut
already
butter or
chewed
something.
gum,
Yeah.
like
It's just
rewrapped in its wrapper.
Just like stuff
Yeah.
that a kid, what a kid's concept of going somewhere away from home. It's like, what would I want with me?
Yeah. Well, so he runs out of lemonade. He's like, here I am, and you can't turn around now. So they like put him to work But so he makes it to England this way, and
Oh,
then
okay.
but the law of I guess the law of the sea is if you have a stowaway, you have to like kick them off at the first,
Mm,
your first stop. So they kick him
okay.
off in England. He gets started boxing because he'd been working with boxers. He started sparring with boxers, and so he became like a professional boxer for a time. He was known as the Sparrow, traveling around getting different bouts, and then eventually got a chance to go to France to fight. Um, and then he was like, "Well, I'm here now, so I'm outie. I'm gonna
Oh,
stay
yeah,
here."
okay.
Leaves his boxing troupe, is like, "I'm gonna stay in France." This is all, like, right before the beginning of World War One.
Oh,
So
boy.
he joins the French Foreign Legion,
Oh, okay.
and he is fighting in the trenches. He It's horrible. He
Mhm.
gets wounded. He's awarded the Croix de Guerre, and which basically grants him also French citizenship. If you fight for France and are wounded, you get French citizenship if you join the
Alright.
French Foreign Legion. So now he is both an American citizen and a French citizen. He's at this point fully fluent in French.
Mm.
He starts talking to one of his friends. Like, this is the other thing. He made friends where, like, wherever he went. So he just had friends everywhere. He was talking to one of his friends and decided he wanted to become a fighter pilot. Um, so fighting for America, like, that would be impossible. Like,
Mm.
the Tuskegee Airmen, like,
Right.
that was,
Not gonna happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
But with the French, he was like, "I might have a chance." And so he signs up, and they, like, give him all of the tests, and they can't really find a reason to deny him, so they're like, "Okay, you can join the flight program."
Nice.
He becomes one of the first battle pilots ever. Like, this is the first war where you had
Oh,
planes
yeah,
in
that's
war.
true.
And so he does that for a time. He gets shot down a couple of times. There is evidence that he actually was in a dogfight with one of, like, the Red Baron type
Oh, okay.
German pilots.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of the records of this time were lost because
Sure.
World War One and World War II, but they have, like, they have his memoirs that he wrote, and they have, some bits and pieces and accounts of his friends and all of that.
Okay.
So at any rate, he becomes a war hero. He's got, like, numerous, medals for valor and for being wounded and all of that stuff. Survives the war, gets a job with a French nightclub. Um,
Okay.
so, he actually gets a job with what becomes a very successful French nightclub, learns from the Jewish man who owns it, and decides he wants to open his own nightclub. Oh, meanwhile, he learned to play the drums and became a jazz drummer.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah,
In
so
his free time.
he was just, like, traveling around Paris and all these different nightclubs playing drums with, like, different jazz groups, where he met, like, a bunch of people. Again, making friends wherever he
This
goes.
is like a Forrest Gump kinda thing, and it's
Completely,
like but it's
completely.
real, but also you're just like, if some guy was telling me he did all this, I'd
Yeah.
be like, "Okay."
Well, and so, yeah, he gives up being a jazz drummer and opens his own nightclub. Like, the first one we have evidence he was in, they're not sure if he owned it or if he was just the manager, but while he was there, Langston Hughes was definitely a busboy. And then he ended up leaving Paris when he got his first poetry published, went back
Mm,
to the
mhm,
United States to concentrate on his writing.
mhm.
But he definitely knew Langston Hughes. He definitely knew, Dooley, I forget his name, the guy who played Sam in Casablanca.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so in Casablanca, he played a piano player. In real life, he was a jazz drummer. So he pretended to play the piano in the movie, but he was a jazz
Oh,
drummer, and so they knew each other, through like, for a good solid decade before
wow.
he even made Casablanca.
So this really is like Forrest Gump, like, he
Yeah,
knew famous
he
people and
knew, he knew Ernest Hemingway, he
Oh,
knew,
yeah, of course.
F. Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda Fitzgerald, he knew Pablo Picasso, he met, the future King of England,
Mm,
like, he knew Josephine Baker.
wow.
All of these people, like, if there's a name you can think of that was kicking around Paris in between the Great Wars, he met them, I guarantee it.
I started this off being like, all the stars are on this podcast, but it's actually the
Yeah,
night sky
no.
was dark because this guy was meeting
Yeah,
them all.
for real.
Okay.
He ended up opening his own, nightclub, and he opened, like, a boxing gym,
Mm,
like, it had, like, a sauna and whatever that was attached to it, so if you joined his club, you also got a free membership to his gym, which was apparently like this it was a perk because you could drink all night, go get a steam, get a massage, and be ready for the day.
Okay.
Um, at some point, he actually married a French heiress, and they had 3 kids. So she was a white woman, so it was an interracial marriage at a time when that was not very common, especially since she was, like, high class, educated.
So although France was more, what would you, egalitarian or whatever, that was still
I
not
mean, it was
as
unusual, but
okay.
by all accounts, like, it wasn't like a scandal,
Okay.
or anything.
So it's not something you saw a lot, but also not something that was like,
Yeah, especially since he was pretty well known as a war hero and, like
oh, okay, that's
and
true.
people were like, this is
He's
he's
legit.
famous, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have 3 kids, one of whom dies in infancy, and then they get a divorce. He claims in his memoirs that they were Catholic and they never divorced, but there actually is documentation that they divorced. They think that he may have written that to protect his kids.
Oh, okay.
They're not sure. And he basically his wife moves away and he tells his daughters that she died, and they have no more contact for the rest of her life. Like,
again, another thing that was possible like way back in the day that would be impossible now.
Yeah.
Be
Well,
like,
and they
she's
say
dead."
like whether or not, they knew what she was doing, she definitely would have been able to find him. Like, so
Right.
they're like, she must have not wanted contact because,
Right.
but at any rate, so now we're looking at the start of World War II, and he starts using his bar to spy for the French. Because the only people spending money in Paris at the time are the German army who are starting to like kick
Occupy
around
the
Paris.
area, yeah.
So they come to his bar a lot, and he's like, we give him some drinks, we hang around. He has this partner named Bricktop who is like a singer and a performer, and like by all accounts, she was like super, you know, charming, and people liked her and they wanted to talk around her. So they partner up with the French government and they're like, we'll just get chummy with the Germans and, gather some info, which ticks off all of the French gangs. And they're like, you're a German collaborator. And so he gets
Oh.
shot
Oh my God.
by the French gangs, nearly dies. So anyway, like,
how bad would you feel if you're like this French gang and you're like, well, we're going to shoot this guy because he's like, buddying up with the Germans. And then you find this out later and you're like, ooh, boy.
Well, and I guess he had a conversation with the gang member who shot him. He was like, I'm your friend. You've known me for years. I don't like the Germans. I don't like the Germans. But he's like, I can't say like I'm working with the French government dope.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, no, you're a traitor. You like the Germans, and like shoots him in the gut. Like,
oh man.
So I don't know. I don't want to like, that's the big chunk of like the astonishing parts of his life. But there are so many details that I have forgotten, or I'm sure I've left out. But like this is an interesting guy who has done a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's almost unfathomable. Okay. I expressed this really stupid thought the other day that I sort of regret saying aloud, but I guess I'm about to do it again.
Yeah.
I was watching these geese that were walking through a parking lot, and I was like, do you think it's weird that like geese live short enough lives and they don't have, conversations with each other?
Mm-hmm.
So like
that we know of.
Yeah. But like, I'm pretty sure geese have no idea that the world as it is today is not how the world has always been.
Yeah.
So in other words, like, I was just like, geese probably would have been much happier here like 200 years ago when this was just a field instead of a parking lot. But they actually don't know. Anyway, it was a dumb thought that I had. But then I was listening to you describe this book, and I'm like, it's just amazing because it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But also, like, to me, today, like, if I was going to move to another state, I would probably get a job there first.
Yeah.
And, like, scout out an apartment and, like, do you can do everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, before you do it. Whereas, like, it wasn't that long ago that it was like, if I wanted to move to Indiana, I guess I would just save up some money and do it.
Yeah.
And then be there and then figure it out when I got there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a
unless you
different...
had like family there that you were like moving between one part of your family to another. Like you literally were just throwing yourself into nothingness.
Yeah, it's kind of unfathomable in a way. Because it's like, wow, I guess that's just what you did back then.
Here's
Like,
hoping it works out.
yeah. If you want to go to France, you just get on a boat. Also, very amusing to me to think of he's on this boat going to France. He's got his lemonade and that runs out. And then he goes up top and then they're like, well, I guess we're stuck with this guy.
Yeah.
And very amusing to me to think, probably a week into this journey, he was like, how far is this?
Yeah.
How long is this going to take?
Yeah.
Because this has already exceeded my expectations fivefold. And like, I don't know that we're even 10%.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Well, and I forgot to mention, like, when he got wounded in World War I, at some point word got back to the United States, probably through war reporting, that this American fighting for the French had been injured, and his dad caught wind of it. And wrote to the French army and was like, he's a minor. He's not allowed. Send him back. But by that point, he was, I think, 16. And they were like, hey, it's legal here. So not doing anything.
Take that.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, your kid disappears and then you're like, oh, he just got shot by the Germans in World War I found out. And so you write and you're like, send him back. And they're like, nah.
Yeah.
And like then you lose track of him again. Like I don't think he ever saw his son again.
That would be pretty nuts.
Yeah.
I think at that point, if that's how I found out my son was like alive and in France, I would probably just write him a letter and be like,
well, but
hey,
where?
buddy, you know what I mean? Yeah.
All you have is like this notice that he's on a wounded list.
I'm just saying, I think I'd try and get in touch with him and just be like, hey, well, I guess things worked out, and I was just trying to protect you because you were 11.
Well,
but
there is some question, like, is that it? Because his mother had died and he was basically looking after all of his siblings. So the question rises, like, we don't really know what his home life was like.
But can you imagine that? Like, you're, I don't know, French government or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, send this kid home so he can watch his brothers and sisters or whatever. And you're like, this sounds like a familial problem that we are not dealing with.
He's 16.
Like,
it's legal. He's a French war hero. He's been wounded in battle fighting for us. Like, I think we prefer to do what he would like, honestly.
I think, you know what? Back in those times, too, like, I remember I interviewed this guy who lived in New Raymer, and he was like, I don't know, maybe in his late 80s, early 90s when we interviewed him. And he was describing when his family came across the plains and stopped somewhere in, like, Nebraska. And then his parents decided to turn back because they were like, forget
this is not
it.
For us.
This sucks.
Yeah.
But he stayed. And he was like 12. And he was just on like a farm by himself at age 12. And I was like, that's like unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Like,
I could not be
understand.
trusted to make my own dinner when I was 12.
I know. It was everything I could manage to walk probably a mile home from school, and then like I was constantly like I had a house key. I constantly lost them. And so and then eventually my mom was like, I'm not giving you another house key because there's going to be a trail of keys from the school to our house. Like someone's going to break into our house.
Yeah.
And I was like, that seems unreasonable. What's someone going to do? Pick up a key and then try it on every door? But also at the same time, I was like, I don't know. How many keys are you supposed to make for this kid before you're like, you're just going to have to wait for your older brother to get home because he's had one key in the last 7 years.
Right.
Anyway, that's like all I could manage at that age, let alone if
I'm
my
sure
parents are like.
If it's survival on the line, like you rise to the occasion to an extent. But like,
I guess, but.
Wow.
Geez.
It does feel like they built them different back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, like even in the 90s, we have a TV show that's Party of Five. And it's like, well, I mean, the older one was like 17 or something, and they're all siblings taking care of each other.
Right.
And even that was a little like, I don't know, is this going to work?
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And it's like, but one was 17, one was 16 or something. And you're like, probably. And they had modern conveniences and like things.
And probably like system support, like there was probably some government agent like checking in on them or saying like we'll give you food assistance if you need it. Like
I don't think this dude had Snap.
No.
Living out by himself on a little farm
Definitely
in Nebraska.
Not. Yeah, definitely not.
I don't know. I couldn't believe this guy was telling me this. This
Yeah.
sounds very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking
That's
for the life
awesome.
story of an interesting guy, Eugene Bullard, interesting guy.
There we go. All right. My 4 books.
Yes.
I have one called Uncanny by Junji Ito.
Okay.
He's a manga guy. He's a big horror guy. Most people would probably recognize his stuff. He did one called Uzumaki. That's probably his most famous. And then there's a Netflix show. It's called like Japanese Horror Stories or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all based on his work.
Didn't he do Spiral?
Spiral. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
Uzumaki.
Oh, okay.
I guess I went all the Japanese.
Yeah, you got all
Sometimes
hoity-toity on me.
Sometimes they publish it under the name Spiral and sometimes Uzumaki. I don't know why they do that. It's very weird.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book that's part memoir, part like how to write horror.
Okay.
The next one is called Heartbreak is the National Anthem by Rob Sheffield. It's a collection of essays about Taylor Swift.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I have read his memoir, which was great.
Yeah, me too. And I really liked it. And I read a second one he did that was also kind of a memoir. He's written a few books. He wrote one about the Beatles a couple of years ago that I didn't read. Anyway.
Love is a Mixtape is the one that I read.
Yeah.
Great book, by the way, if anyone's looking for another good memoir.
That one's excellent. And he wrote one called Talking to Girls About Duran Duran, which is also really good. And so this is another one. So that was mostly why I read it, because I've liked some of his books. Yeah. And I'm not like a huge Swiftie, but I'm also not anti-Taylor Swift.
You couldn't be.
Yeah.
That would be not allowed.
No?
No.
Oh, to be anti-Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you would end up sleeping in your car.
Yeah, I don't think my wife would tolerate that. No. She is a Swiftie.
Yeah.
She's a Swiftie of, she likes the music a lot, but she doesn't really follow the personal life stuff very much. But yeah, it probably wouldn't go very well for me.
Yeah.
But next I have a graphic novel called The Night Never Ends by Steve Thusen.
Okay.
It's a comic about somebody's 30th birthday, and they kind of go out with their friends and explore in a spooky abandoned house, and then a murder cult thing happens, and things go awry.
This dang murder cult's cropping up. You least expect them.
I know. Those pesky murder cults and their scary masks. And the last one is something I actually intended to bring with me, but forgot. It's Fight Club. But it's the Japanese Bunkoban edition. It is a Japanese paperback edition of Fight Club that I purchased in Japan. Because
welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. It's fine to be back. Because they have a very interesting book market over there, and things are different. And the kinds of books they have and how they manage all that is different.
Yeah.
So I got that because I thought it would be fun to have in my Chuck Palahniuk collection.
Yeah.
And I was like, next time he does a signing, I'll bring it. He can sign it. But also I was like, I want to bring back a book because I think
you're a book guy.
I'm a freaking librarian.
That's
okay?
Right.
Cut me some slack.
Oh, I was cutting you the slack before you even asked.
So those are my 4 books.
All right. Well, I want to start with Heartbreak is the National Anthem.
Okay.
Because that sounds like a thing that I might read, potentially.
Okay. So it's a collection of essays about Taylor Swift, and I gather that Rob Sheffield is kind of her, like, official, unofficial interviewer, journalist. He's somebody who's like, first of all, he's a very unabashed Taylor Swift fan. He's a huge, huge Swiftie. And he's been to like some times where I'm trying to think of what you would call this, like a record release. She's done a couple albums, I guess, where they released it, but the way they release it to like the music, he's a music journalist first and foremost. And like the way they released some of her albums to that segment of the press was they had people come to her apartment and listen to it there because that was the only way they could be sure it wouldn't leak or whatever. So he's done that. And like, I don't think he would claim to be like her friend.
Right.
I think he would he's just a big fan of hers and has spent some time around her, but not,
Right.
whatever.
Enough that maybe she knows who he is, but
She probably knows who he is.
they're not
I would
like
guess.
buddies.
Yeah. Okay, so it's an interesting book. And so first, I'm not a Swiftie. My wife is, but I'm also in no way anti-Taylor Swift, and I'm kind of annoyed by anti-Taylor Swift sentiment.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like Swifties are like the most harmless group of people ever.
Well, in general, I don't tend to enjoy when people get off on making fun of people for finding great enjoyment in something.
Yeah.
That feels petty and low.
I think so.
Let people have fun and find joy.
Yeah, I heard someone talking about this once and was just like, life is so hard and it's so hard to find things that make you happy.
Yeah.
And if someone has found something that's made them happy, just let them have it.
It hurts no one.
Yeah.
It literally does not affect you at all.
Well, and I don't know. Sometimes I look at someone like a Taylor Swift, and even if I would think of a critique or whatever, I'm like, who am I to be like, hey, this lady who's 5 to 7 years younger than me and is an international success and probably stimulated the economy more than any other single individual in the last 2 years.
Whose concert attendees had the same effect as an earthquake.
Yeah, who's written 10 albums, and I'm like, who am I to criticize her by being like, yeah, but I mean, she doesn't really shred on the guitar, so so she sucks, Or she writes 2 songs about her boyfriends or whatever. And I'm like, dummy, I wrote a whole book about ex-girlfriends. Who am I? I have no room to complain about what someone else is doing on that front. Anyway, the book is interesting. It's not my favorite Rob Sheffield book because I think reading it, I was like, I don't think this was written for me. And I don't mean that in terms of style or taste, but I could tell there are a lot of references to Taylor Swift songs or lyrics or things.
Yeah.
And it was I know just enough to know a reference is being made and have no idea what is being referenced.
Yeah.
There was there's one, my favorite Taylor Swift song is a song called Coney Island. That's the best one. And he was talking about that briefly, and I got very excited because I was like, if he makes a joke or something or a clever thing, I'm going to get it. Because I know that song. But he didn't. So I was like, damn it.
You were like the Avengers Captain America. I understood that reference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was I had my little notebook and I was like, I have to write this song.
My time has come.
And I was like, here it is. And then he did. I don't think he did. Maybe he did. And I still didn't.
Yeah. Yikes.
Anyway, I think this would be a book that Swifties to partial Swifties would probably get the most out of.
Okay.
Because I think if you have some level of, some number of hours of Taylor Swift listenership under your belt, it might be
some familiarity is going to benefit you.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, it seemed to me like a book that's not full of hot takes, and at the same time I was like, but maybe it is. Maybe what he's saying is controversial in that realm,
right?
And I have no idea. So to me, it just passes over.
Yeah.
It would be like someone being like, I think Steve Ditko is a way better artist than Jack Kirby. And most people would be like, okay, sure.
I have
and I'd
no
be
idea what you just said.
Shut your mouth right but I will say this, there are some of the essays are really very readable for someone, even if you know nothing about Taylor Swift. There was actually a really good one. They're very short. And they usually focus on a single subject. There was a really good one about guitars because around the time Taylor Swift started becoming very famous, guitar industry was noticing that they were not selling very many electrics anymore. They were selling a lot of acoustics and a lot of them to girls in their teens.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they were like, this is a complete industry shift because, up till then it was all sullen teenage boys who,
grew up with hair metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who worked, I can't remember which guitar company he worked for, but he was just I guess there was some, hand-wringing in the industry and some concern about it because he was like, Taylor Swift doesn't shred, and I was like, I guess, but
I mean, you're selling guitars.
that's the thing is I never really got it because I was like, I don't know. I mean, Swiftie money spends, right?
Yeah.
Like it's green. I mean,
You have a new generation of potential musicians,
Yeah.
like learning your instrument. Like,
I, as an amateur author, would be extremely surprised if, let's say, one of my books caught on Book Talk and was very popular among 17-year-old girls. That would shock me in a way,
it seems unlikely.
but I would not complain about it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, whatever. At worst, I would just be like, I don't get it, but like, okay.
I
Like,
mean, who doesn't want their book to become a Book Talk sensation?
I
Like,
know. Exactly. I'd be like, hey, you know what? I'll cash this check and then
Yeah.
see how I feel about it,
you
I
have
guess.
my sincere gratitude for buying my book.
At worst, I think I would just like want to talk to someone and be like, why?
How'd you get here?
Why do you like this? I barely like this. Why do you like it? I think what's nice about the book, though, is it's a book that's about Taylor Swift and about her music and
Mhm.
stuff, written by someone who really likes it.
Yeah.
And I think we're in an era right now where
Wow.
where a lot of the media we see, especially critiquing art or
Yeah.
pop culture, is very negative. And
Yeah.
it's like, what's the hottest take? And what's the most unreasonable takes often seem to be the ones that
Mhm.
get the most traction. And I think it was nice to read this and just to kind of read in the voice of somebody who just genuinely enjoys something.
Yeah. I
And,
so
like,
get that.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when Carrie Elwes released his book, his memoir about making The Princess Bride.
Mm-hmm.
I read it, and it was very, like, misty, affectionate remembrances of all the fun they had and how cool everyone was and how funny everyone was, and I was like, "This is exactly what I want."
Yeah.
I don't want someone being like, "Actually, behind the scenes, Andre the Giant was a huge jerk."
Right.
Like, I don't want that.
Me neither. Me neither. And sometimes I actively avoid that stuff
Yeah.
because I'm like, if it turns out this person sucks, like that's going to
Yeah.
be disappointing.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. It was just kind of like, it was refreshing.
Mhm.
It's kind of an antidote to, I think, what I see online a lot, which is people who don't know anything about anything critiquing something that they have no business critiquing and
Yeah.
just
a
being
bunch of
negative about it,
cynicism.
I
Yeah.
guess. And this was like nice because it's not like she's in his mind and her work is flawless and perfect.
Yeah.
And like he straight up says there are songs he doesn't like, and he like hopes that she doesn't play songs sometimes at concerts, certain songs. And, he thinks she's had some career missteps or whatever.
Yeah.
But like overall and in aggregate, it's very positive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a chronicle of someone really enjoying something and enjoying an artist's output.
Nice.
And yeah, it was just kind of nice to read something like that
Yeah.
and to read something that doesn't have to be so negative and so,
Talking to people, I rarely enjoy conversations more than listening to someone talk about a thing that they really love.
yeah.
Like, that kind of enthusiasm is contagious. Like, listening to you talk about graphic novels,
Yeah.
like, there are some that you read that I'm like, that is not my thing and I will never read it. But,
Yeah.
like, it's fun to listen to you talk about it because you're so into it. Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's a lot to be said for talking to someone about something that even if you're not interested in it, is something that is for them just like,
Yeah.
this is my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I could talk about it forever and just
Yeah.
to kind of hear their interest in it. And it's like, it's just nice. It's
Yeah.
a nice time you can have with this book.
Well, and it's like a little doorway for me into a topic that otherwise would be closed. Like,
Yeah, and that's why I picked it up too, because I was like, I'm never gonna be like a Swiftie, and I'm never gonna be one of these people who's like decoding her.
yeah.
In the music video, she got on the elevator and pushed this button. That must mean this album is coming next, or like, I mean, it is crazy.
Yeah.
Although my favorite conspiracy theory, I was looking for light conspiracy theories because I'm not into like flat Earth and stuff. Because I'm
Right.
like, I don't know. That makes people do things that I don't approve of.
Right.
But the one that she carries handbags that are completely empty all the time was one of my favorite theories because I was like, this hurts nobody.
Right.
It has no real purpose. It's just baffling. But then, it made me think too, because I was like, I guess Taylor Swift must have like a credit card and an email address. But it's
Yeah.
weird to me to think that, because I'm like, doesn't Taylor Swift just walk into Starbucks and they know who she is and they can just, I don't know, like it just knows? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
she's good for it, right? Like,
Or she has like some assistant who is
yeah,
like, I'll handle the payment part.
exactly. And I was like, maybe I wonder if Taylor Swift does have an email address. You know what I mean? Like, do her buddies have her email?
Yes, I guarantee it.
Think so?
Yes, because I know who is it? I was just I was either reading or I was watching a clip of an interview with somebody. Oh, I wish I could remember who it was. It was somebody famous, and they were like, oh, it was Ariana Grande.
Okay.
She plays Wordle with strangers,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
as, like, it's her favorite thing to do, and so I'm like, there must yeah, they all have, like, some rando, Gmail address that they
Yeah.
set up that, only their most trusted people have, like, mom has it,
Yeah.
best friend from high school has it, like
Okay. Yeah. That's like, there was a story like during peak pandemic shutdown of someone was playing Animal Crossing and Elijah Wood visited their island to like trade stuff. And it turned out to definitely be Elijah Wood.
I
And it
love
was
that
like,
stuff.
I can't remember how they knew it was him, but it turned out it actually was him. And like, it was
Ugh.
just so funny because he was just there and I don't know. He was just,
These are the stories, like, we need more of this in the
yes.
news.
There was a
Like,
story.
I wanna know the serious news, like,
Yeah.
I wanna be informed, but let's be honest, we all need, like, an hour of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw something the other day that seemed very manufactured. It was like some celebrity talking about how they liked tacos from Jack in the Box or whatever, and it felt like they're just like us,
Right.
but I was like, I don't know, but I'm like, Elijah Wood casually visiting other islands in Animal Crossing. I was like, that's one of the real ones. That's for real.
Yeah. I love it.
All
Thumbs
right.
up.
There you go.
Okay. Your turn.
Let's see. Need to circle this so I know which ones I did. I want to hear about the graphic novel Brunhild the Dragon Slayer.
All right. I gotta say, I wasn't sure what to expect from this one. I'm not sure it's my favorite thing. I gotta be honest.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It was a bit weird for me. I think it may be like, so it's manga.
Mm,
It's like not like superhero graphic novel. It's like manga graphic novel.
okay.
And I was interested in it because it seemed like it had maybe a connection to like Norse mythology, which I'm interested in. I was like Brunhild, just like a Valkyrie name. And so I was like, I'm gonna give it a try. We'll see what it's all about. It turns out that it's about like there are these islands and they're called Edens, and all of the animals on these islands can all like communicate with each other. They don't fight. Like it's literally like paradise on earth, and each one is guarded by a dragon.
Okay.
And dragons keep humanity out because humans have lost this ability to like have pure like love and peace and whatever. Like they're always trying to like have ownership of things or like have attachment to things. Like
So
all
the
of
animals are like, we got to keep the riffraff out.
well, the dragons more
Oh,
than
the
the
dragons,
animals.
okay.
Yeah, the dragons kind of protect Eden from invasion by the humans. Which, when you figure out that humans visit these islands pretty much by bringing like warships and
Oh,
like
okay.
and fighter planes and stuff to attack them, like you're like, okay, fair enough. And one day, this little girl, she's like toddler, she ends up like washed up on the shore of one of these Edens, and she gets splashed by the blood of a dragon, which kind of changes her. And she can all of a sudden understand like the language of the animals and, all of these things. And so the dragon is like, maybe she wasn't tainted yet. So
Okay.
I'm going to raise her like as my daughter.
Maybe this will be okay.
Yeah. And then she gets to like, I don't know, 16, and he starts to see these hints that like she wants to. So He's very much like, accept your fate. Like, at some point, the humans are going to figure out a way to kill me, and
Mm.
like, I will die, but I'll go to heaven with all my animal friends, and everything's going to it'll be fine.
It's fine.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
And she's like, no, kill the humans. Like, I don't want you to die. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe it was too late. So maybe I'll bring her to like the land of the humans, and like, we'll see if we can get her, you know, reacclimated, and maybe she'll live with them. Like, maybe that would be better.
Okay.
So the dragon can like transform itself to look like a human. So he transforms himself into a human and takes her to the human society, and they wander around, and she sees that there's this like culture of dragon slaying. And, that if you can get the blood of a dragon, like, it can heal you, it can make you immortal, it can do all of these things. And so they all want to kill the dragons, and that's why they're attacking these Edens.
Mm.
And she's like, this is not okay, and I don't like this. And he's like, well, it is what it is. And she's like, no. And I don't know. So by the end of the book, like, the humans kill the dragon, and she's like, I'm gonna become like this protector of the dragons, and I'm gonna fight the humans. And I'm not sure I'm gonna continue with the series. It
Okay.
was, I don't know, it was like fine, but I don't know.
Not what you were looking
Yeah,
for
it
exactly.
didn't really hit me. I don't know. I don't know why, but
Okay.
it's one of those things. Maybe wrong book for the time, or wrong book
Yeah.
for me. I don't know.
Sounds more general fantasy than Norse.
Yeah, there
Ish.
was very little mythology stuff in
Okay.
it. There were like hints of things, and some of the names and like some of the writing looked runic, but like, let's be honest, it wasn't really.
If you're interested in Norse graphic novels.
Are you going to say Vinland Saga?
Yes.
I knew you were.
Have you read it?
No.
It's really good. I think you'd like it. It's very meticulously researched.
All right.
The author, at the end of each sort of big, of the smaller books, he kind of puts in like the research of like, here's what the Vikings believed, and here's how the Vikings did this, and like,
Okay.
here's sort of the real world equivalent of where these characters would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's like got fantastical elements to. It's not
Sure.
not like magical, but it's like
Mythological.
yeah.
Yeah.
But overall it's pretty grounded in reality.
Okay.
I loved it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not finished yet, but I
No, I know.
loved what
I
read.
think I just added volume like 15 or something
Yeah.
to the
I
collection.
think they just had, maybe it's like the penultimate one or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Well, that's
Noted.
a bummer, but
I mean, it is what it is. You try things.
Yeah.
Okay. It's fine.
All right. Ready to pick a
Yes,
final
I am.
countdown?
I want to hear about Night Never Ends.
Okay.
Because I love a horror story.
Okay, so this is about, I'm going to start describing this, and it's going to start sounding kind of negative.
Okay.
Because my experience with this book was, at first, and maybe for the first quarter, I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could do this. It's about a group of friends, and one of them is turning 30.
Mhm.
And so, is like having a midlife crisis, let's call it, I guess. And there's got to be, we got to come up with some kind of name for the crisis people have when they're turning 30,
Yeah.
which turns out to be a totally nonsense
I know.
crisis, because you're like, 30 is a lot more like 20 than it is like 40.
30 is the best decade.
I think it's pretty good.
I
yeah.
had a friend who I shared an office with before I left the far branch, and she was turning 30, and she was really like fretting about it. I was like, you have no idea. 30s are the best.
30s are
You
great.
have some disposable income.
Yeah.
You're still young enough that you like spring back from illness and
Yep.
injury like super easy.
Yeah.
Like you're young, but you have like security. You know who you are. You have more
Yeah.
confidence. Like 30s are the best.
I think 30s are much better than 20s.
Oh yeah.
And then physically and stuff, I'm like, 40s are a little worse,
Yeah.
I try not to get too down about it, but I'm like, it's not the same.
I swear I hit 40, and I would like the next day I woke up and I was like, I slept weird and I hurt.
Yeah, right. Okay, so turning 30, having that 30-year-old crisis, And they decide to go to like an abandoned house. You know how like small towns all have like the spooky house,
Yeah.
and mostly teenagers go in there and party.
Yeah, and tag it up.
Yep. So they decide to go to the spooky house because none of them have ever been there.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them, all of about 30-ish, but they're all a little younger than this other one. So they go in there and they're kind of hanging out. And of course, this is a horror story and it's taking place in modern times.
Mhm.
So, someone's using their phone for something or texting or something. And then the birthday person is like, I'm taking everyone's phones away because, you're
Phones
being
ruin
on your
everything in
phone.
modern literature.
Yep. And it's also convenient because then they don't have their phones when things start turning murdery.
Yep.
So then they go, like, they're exploring around in the house a little, and they go in the basement and discover there's, like, a murder cult happening. And they, like, already stabbed someone, and they're, like, about to stab someone else or something.
Okay, so it's not evidence that a cult is using the house. The cult is actively
It's
there.
happening right then, yeah. And so then, the bulk of the book is them sort of, some of them are captured, some of them escape immediately, some of them who are captured kind of escape, and then, they're pursued by the murder cult and like whatever. What's weird about the book, or what I didn't like about it, is like at first I felt like the dialogue was like a little too cute and clever and felt like it was trying to have like young people slang, but I was like, I don't know, is this really how people talk,
The Steve Buscemi fellow, how's it going, fellow kids?
A little bit, yeah. And then but then I started to turn around on it a little, and I was having problems because it was inconsistent for me.
Okay.
Like, you know how I think most horror movies, it's kind of like they have some funny parts and like whatever, and you get to know the characters. And then things turn at some point, and then you're in a horror movie and it's not really funny anymore. And this felt like it kept going back and forth. And there's one sequence where, like, pretty early on, the murder cult enters the scene, and then they've escaped them temporarily, and they're all just kind of hiding out somewhere. And they're having a conversation that I was like, would you really be having this conversation while being pursued by someone who is actually trying to stab you? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you'd be talking about this. It was like an indie movie conversation, like a Clerks or something. They're talking about just some nonsense or whatever and kind of joking around and stuff. But then, I don't know, something switched, and I felt like I kind of like that it has this like, I'd almost call it like an inconsistent tone, which isn't fair, but it's like a tone, it's like a wackiness. And that's something that I miss from like movies. Like, I think about a lot of movies go this route when they do the reboot, and they make it a little more like sincere or dour as opposed to making it more fun. I think about a movie like RoboCop, right?
Yeah.
And like the original RoboCop is horrifically violent,
Yep.
and it does have something to say, but it's also very goofy in some ways. You know what I mean? And just some of it is so over the top and so wacky. And then they reboot it, and that is gone.
Yeah.
Like the wackiness, the over the topness, and whatever. Or I think of like the more recent entries in Ghostbusters. I have felt like we're a little more sincere and a little less just like, these are all scam artists. These are horrible people. Like,
I will say though that I enjoyed Chris Hemsworth's appearance as like the brainless, but lovable like assistant guy.
I wasn't so much thinking that one as then the two that have followed.
Okay,
the
gotcha.
Afterlife and
I didn't see.
Oh, okay. It has some elements to it that's it's like a little bit more reverent of the previous movies and like the characters, and I don't know. And I think it's complicated too because Harold Ramis was dead, and they kind of did the like.
Well, and I think he was pretty against the making of the.
Yeah. And then they did the thing that you just don't want people to do, which is like, please don't have like a CG ghost Harold Ramis. And then he shows up and you're like, oh,
they did.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, considering he was against it, that's like extra.
I know. And you're just like, oh, guys, come on. We don't need that. I don't need that. Anyway, So this, I guess, in some ways, I was like, it took me like a third of the book to sort of get used to the rhythm of it or the vibe of it.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay, this is like, I keep comparing it to like Clerks. And I'm like, this is like Clerks, but instead of being in a convenience store, they're running away from
They're in a haunted
murderers.
house or something,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like a horror tinged Clerks or something.
Okay.
And once I started looking at it that way and just, I guess, telling myself like, bro, calm down. This is not that serious. I really started to enjoy it and thought it was a lot of fun. I think it just took me a minute to get to the place where I was like, this is less of like a slasher horror Halloween type movie,
Right.
more of like a Scream movie.
Yeah.
One of the earlier entries where it was also very funny.
Yeah.
Um,
I get that. When something surprises you, sometimes you need to, like, take a minute.
yeah. Yeah, it felt like, I was just like recalibrating reading it, and then like it clicked and I was like, oh, okay, now I
Yeah.
can enjoy this because I understand what it's doing.
Right.
So it's a book that I recommend, and I just
Pardon me.
Oh, you're fine. What's atypical about the recommendation is normally I'm the person who's like, hey man, if you're 2 paragraphs in and you hate it, put it down.
Right.
It's not worth it. This is one that I'm like, if you're not quite feeling it, go to the part. There's a part where they're, I won't spoil anything. There's a part where they're like at a playground. If you get to there and you're not liking it, then go ahead and quit.
Okay.
But if you read up to there, it doesn't take very long. It moves really fast. But if you're not feeling it in the opening pages, give it a little bit more time.
Okay.
And just feel it out a little bit.
All right. I'm intrigued.
That's The Night Never Ends.
All right.
Okay, so then you've got 2 more books to talk about in brief, and I do as well.
All right, so first I'll go over Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper.
Okay.
This is a book that I know I read when I was younger and loved, but I have very little memory of what it was about. It was like, just I had a lot of affection for it, but I couldn't, and I knew kind of what it was about, but a lot of the details had fled from my brains.
When you say younger,
like, I don't know, 12.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, like it's a J-fic, so it would be, in with your like Babysitter's Club age stuff.
Okay.
And that's about when I would have read it, and I was like, I should go back and read some of these books that I remember really loving when I was young and just see, what was going on in my little girl brain at the time.
Yeah.
So I decided, it's like, I'm going to reread it. And I picked it up. And the thing that it makes me think of the most is like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Okay.
It has those kinds of vibes. So it's this family of kids, and they go with their parents to visit, to stay like for the summer with their uncle. And he's like a mysterious uncle who like travels and, makes discoveries and stuff.
A real all blood runs red type of guy.
I mean, I guess maybe, but more mysterious than that.
Oh, okay.
And they're going to stay in Cornwall. And they're staying in the house of the sea captain who's away. And so the whole family is staying in this house. And while they're there, they discover what looks like a really ancient treasure map. And they start to figure out that it's a treasure map from medieval times or even before that looks to be referring to King Arthur and maybe is a map to the Grail.
Oh, okay.
And so also there are other like factions of people, maybe some creepy, sinister people,
of course,
who are on the same, trail.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes this like very adventure story, like good versus evil. You have this, family of, I think there's 2 boys and a girl, and they're like finding this treasure and having this adventure while also fighting the forces of darkness. And so I think it's either 4 or 5 books. It's the Dark is Rising sequence, and Oversea Understone is the first in the series. And
okay.
I think I'm going to go through and just reread all of them. They're not that long, and they're, pretty fun. They're from like, I think the author, Susan Cooper, started writing them in like maybe the 50s.
Oh, okay.
So there are parts of them that are a little dated.
Sure.
Some word choices or references
Sure.
that you might be like, today maybe less, some of this would have changed. But
Right.
it also, I think it has the makings of kind of an enduring classic,
Yeah.
where, especially for older kids that you can talk to about, like, we probably wouldn't use like
Sure.
this word or refer to people this way. Um, I think there's a lot of fun to be had in these books still.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tough with stuff like that, but overall I've always felt like if I'm getting the vibe that like, the word choices or whatever are just like, well, look, I think if this person wrote this today, they would not select
Yeah.
these words, but they weren't writing this today.
Yeah.
So these were the words that were the equivalent of those words at
Yeah.
that time.
I don't get any, ill
Malicious.
intention.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, that's the way
Yeah.
that's the way language worked at the time.
Yep.
So it's fine. And then we have Rules for Ruin by Mimi Matthews, which is out, I think, towards the end of May. And it is a historical romance that I had so much fun with. This is one that was sent to me early so I could review it for Library Journal. And you have this woman, her name is Miss Euphemia Flight, which I think is a great name. And
Euphemia Flight.
yep. She was orphaned young, and she grew up in this school for young ladies that is actually a front for, like they raised these girls to basically be activists for women's rights,
Okay.
And so the school mistress who basically raised her calls her in and says, like, um, I will release you from your obligations to me if you can infiltrate society in London and basically ruin the political career of this guy who did something terrible to a lady I know.
Okay.
And she's like, okay. So
All right, I'll do it.
she basically gets brought in as a companion to somebody who owes her, the schoolmistress, a favor, and she enters society. And her aim is to find some piece of evidence of his like misdeeds.
Okay.
He's apparently a bad guy who's done lots of bad things, and she just needs to find some evidence of that and release it to the public, so that his political career will be ruined and his life will be ruined, and he can stop ruining the lives of others.
Sounds solid plan. Yeah.
So she gets there,
How
and
hard
then
could it be if he's done a
Right.
bunch of stuff? Yeah.
right. So she gets there, and there's this guy, Gabriel Royce, and he is not a gentleman, but he is gentleman adjacent.
Hmm.
So he owns like gambling halls and stuff in the slums of London, but he's also his intention is to earn enough money to build like schools and hospitals for the poor in these bad neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he needs is the support of a powerful political figure.
Mm-hmm.
And he has picked this guy that she needs to ruin.
Oh,
So
no.
he's like, you can't ruin him because I need him to get my
That'll ruin
legislation
thing.
through
Yeah.
Parliament.
Right.
And so, but they also have like this instant, because this is a romance novel, they have this
Sure.
instant attraction, but their goals are completely at odds to each other.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like climbing buildings in the middle of the night, like to sneak into offices and like discovering each other in places they shouldn't be. And like, it was just a lot of fun.
Okay.
And it's for anybody who, it's not super spicy. So if you're looking for super spicy, there's enough like adventure and chemistry that I don't think you'll miss it that much.
Mm-hmm.
And if you prefer more of a closed door romance,
Mm-hmm.
this will satisfy that for you. It's
Okay.
not super spicy.
Okay.
But very much fun, and it's the first in a series that focuses on this school for young ladies that like turns out these like they look proper, they know all of their manners, they know how to dress and hold themselves so that they look respectable, but by night they're like, ruining terrible people and
Bringing
breaking
down
into offices.
society or
Yeah.
whatever.
So anyway, super
That's
fun.
funny.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
I like that. Do you think something like that ever really existed?
Well, I know that there was a group of women in London, I want to say somewhere in the vicinity of Victorian times, I'm not sure exactly when, called the 40 Elephants, and they were an organized crime syndicate. And there is a series of romance novels about them written by Sarah MacLean.
See, I knew that when I asked that question that I was asking the most right person that question. That was like asking me if Donkey Kong or King Kong came first.
You came to the right source.
Yeah. Okay. I talked about Heartbreak is the National Anthem by Rob Sheffield and The Night Never Ends by Steve Thusen.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to Uncanny by Junji Ito. Basically, it's half memoir, half sort of how to tell horror stories. It's kind of like if you imagine Stephen King's On Writing, but more based on comics and short stories and things like that.
Yeah.
And he has some specific insights into like how to tell horror stories, and like he talks a lot about he shares his opinion a lot, and he's very humble about it. Like he's very like, I don't know, this is just kind of how I do it and what I think, and maybe other people are successful other ways. But he talks a lot about like, he's like, I don't really do monsters in my stories. I do things that happen to humans because I think that's more horrific. He's like, because I think you can kind of imagine that happening to you.
Yeah.
It's more
I've read
vivid.
Spiral, and there is some horrific stuff in there.
Some of the he draws some of the like most messed up imagery, and he's like the quintessential to like. You read his books and you see his art, and then you expect to see him, and you're like, he's gonna look, crazy. Like he's gonna look like Edward Scissorhands or something, and he's like the most unassuming, like
it's like grandpa in a sweater vest
guy. Yeah. He started off. He talks a little bit about being like a kid or whatever, but not a ton. And then he started off working at like a dental lab, where basically they made fillings and crowns and stuff like that. And it wasn't like inspiring work for him, but he was good at it.
Right.
It was kind of like probably his artistic talent, because he kind of went to like the initial classes and stuff for it, and they had to like shape a tooth and stuff like that. And they were like, this looks amazing. You do really good. But he was like, it was always a struggle for him because he could do a really good job, but he wasn't fast.
Oh, yeah.
And he describes like it. So he worked for this dental lab, and it was a dental lab that was kind of in a decline. And so they kept losing people working there and couldn't rehire them. So every so often he'd have to hire a temp because they would get behind. And he's like, the first time this temp came in, he's like, I would do these crowns, and I would do them one at a time because you had to like pour the metal in, and it would dry really fast. You had to be super careful and whatever. And he's like, so I was like watching with horror because this guy lined up like 10 teeth all at once. And he was like, there's no freaking way. And then he's like, and he did them all 10, and they were like perfect. And he's like, I was just like blown away. And he's like, I am not good at this. Like, I just found out that I suck. But anyway, and he'd always drawn comics and stuff, even when he was a child. And it'd always been kind of a passion of his. And then at some point he started getting some stories published. And then a lot of it's focused on when he made the leap into doing that full time.
Yeah.
But basically the big thing that happened was he was working at the dental place and then doing comics. And he was like, it's kind of time to make the decision to move over to comics full time. And his family had like a little intervention with him because they were like, you have a steady job, it pays you okay, and like whatever. And he was like, but actually I ended the intervention because I showed his brother-in-law was like a big player. And he's like, I showed him one of my pay stubs from the dental office, and he was like, okay, maybe you should do comics. I thought it was great. I mean, it's a fun read. It's an interesting read. If you like to read those sort of like, get some insight into an interesting author's process. He shows a lot of images from the comics he's done. He shows a lot of like the working documents he made to like flesh things out and stuff like that. Here's the one complaint I have about this book, and it's pretty serious. He is like a manga master. I mean, his images are horrifying and, amazing, and he's done hundreds of iconic images. The cover of this book is the title and his name in the John Carpenter Albertus font. Now, if you had to just do a font and do that, I guess that's fine. But then you look at the back cover, Or you look at the Japanese edition, and it's got this amazing illustration with like a bunch of his, most well-known characters and stuff like that. And I'm like, how do you have a book by an amazing illustrator and you have a cover with no art on it?
Yeah.
And I was like, it almost feels like what happened was, it's a book that's read from left to right. The text is left to right, but it's read from right to left, like a manga.
Okay.
So I almost wonder if they accidentally
put the cover on the
do
back.
the art on the and they screwed it up. I don't know, but I was like, I just that's what I have to tell myself because the only way that I can make any sense of it. The last one is just Fight Club, the Japanese Bunkoban edition. I just wanted to talk about it really briefly because in Japan, I went to a used bookstore and I was fascinated because I discovered that they have, it was packed. It was like 7 floors, just absolutely jammed with books.
That sounds amazing.
It is incredible. And there are only a few different sizes. Most books, other than like art books or special editions, are published in the same-ish size. Most novels, it seemed like, were published in this bunkoban size, which is 4 inches by 5.8, or like basically a standard printed photo. So quite a bit smaller than what we're used to. And they have like a paper dust jacket and then a very thin cover. And the paper is kind of like what we call Bible paper.
Okay, like that onion skin.
Yeah, so it's very thin. But what the result is this is a book you could actually carry around. It would fit easily in a men's pants pocket, probably not a lady's pants pocket because those pockets are garbage.
Yeah,
but
we don't get pockets.
What could you expect? But I mean, it's easier to carry around than like your cell phone.
Okay.
And I was like, this is such a great idea. They also have quite a industry there of like book covers because you can buy like a nicer cover for your book. And it, protects the book, but also makes it easy to carry around and no one can see what you're reading.
Right.
And you can do that because the books are the same size.
Right.
And it just, it was upsetting to me because I was like, American hardback books are too damn big.
Yeah.
You don't want to take them with you anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what am I going to do? Carry a whole backpack just so I can bring a book with me? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to briefly talk about that. I'll bring it next time so we can talk about it some more. But we got to get out of here.
Yeah, we're running out of time.
So thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
This has been Why Did You Read That?
Yeah, we're back to normal.
Episode something. We'll see you in about a month.